Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar. Thank you for joining us for today's presentation. This is our Adobe Personalization and Experimentation Excellence with Recommendations and AI webinar, and we are so glad to have you with us. And now I'd like to hand this session over to our highly regarded speaker, Drew Burns, who is our Group Product Marketing Manager here at Adobe. Hello, Drew. Welcome, and the stage is now yours.
Thank you so much, Emily, and thank you all for joining us today. And it is the second webinar in our three-part series on personalization and experimentation maturity. And it is a mouthful, personalization and experimentation excellence with recommendations in AI. It's a mouthful, not just because of words, but because we're finally at a pivot point in terms of experimentation and personalization. No matter where your company resides, if it's B2B space, as Mary's company Red Hat is in, or B2C, the mandate is out there to be experimenting, not just on the decisions that are being made in terms of content being shown, but also features that are rolling out to make sure they're performing well and being delivered to the right people, but also personalization at scale and being able to do that at a segment and even at an individual level. And we're finally at an exciting point where companies are realizing they can do this, grow to scale. The technology is finally there that's allowing us to do that with the rise in CDPs and the unification of data. And now the introduction of Gen AI, which is creating exciting new features, efficiencies, speed, and scale. And we'll be sharing. We'll be scaring you. We'll be sharing it with you today. And of course, it's not just going to be me. I am very honored to have two of my esteemed colleagues, Brian from AdSwerve and Mary, as I mentioned, from Red Hat, AdSwerve being one of our partners, and Red Hat using Adobe Target and recommendations of personalization. And so you'll be able to hear all about that in just a sec. But I've been given 10 minutes. So that's us. Hello, you'll be hearing from all of us in good time. But I'm going to start out with talking about AI in the product that you have available already and how companies have been embracing that and using it for some pretty incredible and progressive use cases, and probably some use cases you weren't thinking about. I'll also be teasing Summit. I have Mary, I have Brian. We were just talking before the call about how we love getting together. We love geeking out and doing knowledge sharing on best practices and use cases. Summit, Adobe Summit, is 2 weeks away. Hopefully you all be there. Hopefully if not, you'll be tuning in virtually to get all of those best practices and use cases and inspiration. We'll be sharing that and sharing what we normally share when we geek out on the call, or the session rather, today. So I'll be talking a little bit about the announcements. I talked about it in the first session, reminding everybody what we'll be announcing. A lot going on with Adobe Target, as you can imagine, with the advancements we're making in the ecosystem and with Gen AI. Now in Target, some pretty big announcements happening around Summit. Then I'll hand it off to Brian to talk about how Gen AI is working with Target. We're taking advantage of our broader ecosystem as we're building out Gen AI features within the product itself. They'll be sharing some amazing use cases, not just in terms of generation of content or activities, but also strategy. And then we'll hand it off to Mary to talk about the amazing success and use cases that they're seeing in the B2B space with use cases that are to the possible at Red Hat. Again, it's not possible anymore. It's not vision. It's in practice. And this is the second part. As we were saying, we talked about innovations and Gen AI in the first session. The third session will be recapping what we announced at Summit and talking about the application of those announcements. Please tune in for that one. That'll be a big one. No joke on April Fool's Day. So sign up if you haven't already. As I mentioned, there are capabilities in the product right now that you can put to work. So if you're doing manual testing and targeting, you can take it to the next level. Auto allocate allows you to test multiple variations, but find the winner faster and stop activity at any time to find that winner as it pushes traffic with the multi-iron bandit to that winning variant. Automated personalization for rank ordered, not just offers, but design as well. And I'll be talking about that in just a second. And then auto target for one-to-one personalization of a container, multiple containers, or even an entire page. If you go to adobe.com, the lobby experience that you're putting there is an auto target activity and is custom designed for you. So that is a great use case there. all of this AI, if you haven't been familiar with it, and you'll see Mary will cover a little bit of her process for adopting recommendations at Red Hat. It's a 3-step workflow for all those activities. So if you know how to do an A/B test, you know how to do experience targeting, you know, and can adopt these additional capabilities and recommendations. Really want to lean in on that today when talking about best practices around that. The point here is just to say, we're familiar with it in the B2C space, obviously, in terms of additional products you might be interested in, or you might want to add to cart, let's say, helping with that. But it can be used for content. As we have left off on an article, let's say, or we're learning more in the B2B space about a specific service or a specific product, it will take you to that next content based on where you're at in your consideration process. Recommendations can be very good at welcoming you back. Think of it as a virtual navigational tool, as NVIDIA uses on their website, on their homepage. They've got a slew of products. The last product you're looking at, showing you additional products from that category, and most popular as well. It can help you reduce the clicks, reduce the friction, find what you're looking for more easily. And then in the customer service space as well, it can help with lowering that call center costs or support costs, because it can recommend the content or information that you need. And then sales collateral too, even in B2B. So there's a lot of use cases for recommendations that we underutilize. And we've got a lot of algorithms out of the box that you can customize. One that I want to call recommended for you is a really powerful one based on your full browsing history. Think of that as a navigational tool, something you can pop right on your homepage that can help welcome you back and take you back to those areas of the site you're most interested in. Category affinity would be something we score in the target profile. A new one or newer one is under content based, but really, I know it's called cart based recommendations, but really it's wherever you've gathered anything, be it content in a repository, or videos that you viewed, or things obviously that you've added to cart, and we can base the recommendations based on those groupings. So that's something to think about in terms of strategy. Where can we have people select their favorites or select things that they prefer, and then we can base recommendations upon that. So these are all algorithms you can customize out of the box, configure, you can test and optimize them. Obviously, if you're personalizing, you should bring them higher up on the page. But as I mentioned, we all get distracted. We're engaging with a B2B or a B2C company, and then maybe it's at lunch. We got to get back to work, or the kids come in and we get distracted somehow. We want to come back and easily find what we were looking for. Maybe it's a dress that you love. Maybe it's an article you were reading that you didn't quite finish. Imagine if you fund promoted that. We can have cart slot level control in our carousels. You can welcome somebody back with that piece and then show them additional pieces that they'd want to look at next. Again, it could be broader based on browsing, or it can be next within that category. It's for us to figure out what is right by testing. So that's where recommendations as a variation in an A/B test out of the box. You can select a container in the Visual Experience Composer, say, I want to put recommendations here. That maybe could be the second experience variation in a test. Should recommendations even be there? Then what should be the algorithm that's driving it? Should I front promote the last thing that was viewed? All of these can be answered with experimentation as their foundation. And auto allocate can even be used. That's the brilliance of having recommendations at the experience level. We can layer on automation on top of that. I can push, if I have different potential recommendations I could show to a population or specific segments, I can have the multi-arm bandit help push traffic towards the winning one, or layer on auto target, let's say, if I want to find the right one for each individual based on what we know about them at that given point. Obviously, it'll refresh as we learn more. Or even multiple carousels. If you want to really use recommendations more specifically and in a bigger way. So layering on AI on top of AI, on top of those recommendations algorithms, can help determine what's the right logic to show to an individual or a segment at a given point. As I mentioned, automated personalization. So again, 3-step workflow, just like an A/B test. The power of a random forest ensemble, it is looking at the entire profile or a subset of the profile that you select, and it's scoring over time. It's learning what's most predictive to show a next best experience, or in this case, a rank ordered experience. A lot of interest in terms of a product page or a content page in B2B and reordering that. Some people want a deeper description and they want it revealed. Some people want to just find out what others think of the product or the application, let's say, or the service. And so reviews are higher up for other individuals. So being able to rank order a page based on what someone's most interested in, that's a powerful use case for obviously a dynamic homepage or a product page or a content page. And that's something to think about. Multiple areas of the page and reordering it based on an individual's profile and what's most predictive. So a lot of stuff we're talking about, not just in terms of are the possible with Target, these use cases, but also in terms of innovation. And I talked about this in the last session, a completely redesigned UI for efficiency, built on React Spectrum. So no loadings of different points of the activity creation, a much more seamless flow, improvements to the activity list and governance, profile scripts auto-filling so you can make those faster and better. We have Gen AI built in to the application coming. So there's a beta happening right now, but it will be GAing around the summit timeframe and in April. Um, an AI assistant for product knowledge. So answering the questions that you have. And what we found is when you ask it questions around use cases, it will pull upon our best practices and our documentation to make examples of use cases you might be interested in. And then AI assistant for content creation built into the visual experience composer. So it can make suggestions on text that you might want to update based on a specific segment or a specific intent of the audience that you're trying to engage with. And then there's an embargoed announcement, but something really, really exciting. Oh, what I can share with you about it is Gen AI for strategy. How do we prioritize where and how to use the product for the greatest return? That's the most I can tell you right now. Tune in 2 weeks. There's a lot of cool stuff coming to Target. Breakout sessions you should sign up for. Prudential talking about using Gen AI for content creation and acceleration there. Generative experiments. That might have been what I was teasing in terms of that embargoed announcement that you'll hear more about in 2 weeks. So tune in. A lot of exciting things. CDN experimentation being another big innovation, being able to use edge workers like Akamai for near latency free testing and targeting. There'll be a lab on that. And then join us for a VIP breakfast where the Home Depot will be sharing an integration with Workfront Fusion that has accelerated their experimentation by 4x. They were already doing an amazing volume per year, but now it's 4x. So the summary of all of our announcements, a lot that we're talking about. You can see Gen AI being built into the product, the Gen AI being already taken advantage of in the broader ecosystem at Adobe and with vendors outside of Adobe. And to share some of that knowledge is my esteemed colleague, Brian Hawkins from AdSware. Handing it off to Brian.
Thank you, Drew. I have to say, I'm very excited about this VIP breakfast. Also, some of the things that you had touched on quickly about the automated personalization and auto target. So behind the Adobe Target profile, those are the two favorite things for me. So really cool. And for those of you not familiar with it, I second Drew and encourage you to check them out. Quite powerful. So, very excited to be with you. Thank you for joining us today. My section of it is I'm going to geek out over personalization and experimentation with AI. Very, very excited. Very fun project that I'm excited to show you real examples with and jump into it. But who is this guy on the other end? So, a little bit about me. I'm been in this space for a long, 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 long time. Back in 2006, I joined a company called Offermatica, employee like number 17. And Offermatica, for those of you that don't know, is Adobe Target today. So I've been using this tool for almost 20 years. In my history, I do a lot in the space, and I've helped a lot of companies over the years. You can kind of see the passion that I have and just the power because of this product. So started off with Offermatica and then Omniture, which is now Analytics. Adobe Analytics bought Offermatica. Lots of roles there. Got to work with primarily in consulting. Worked with the product teams, intimately close for a lot of the features and functionality that exists today. And then Adobe came in and acquired Omniture. So I became an Adobe employer, one of the best companies to work for. I was the Adobe Target SC that the sales guy would fly around the country to help, talk with the technical folks to help them understand the power of Adobe Target and how it works. And then in 2012, I joined a company called Analytics Demystified because I wanted to kind of get back into consulting and help organizations scale. Analytics Demystified primarily focused on Adobe Analytics and Site Catalyst, if those of you that remember that back in the day. But I started up their optimization practice and grew it quite a bit. I was fortunate enough to help so many companies around the world do so many amazing things with Adobe Target. And then I also had the good fortune to co-author a book on Adobe Target Classroom in the book that I've gotten a lot of positive feedback from. And in that time, I also saw an opportunity to use Adobe's rich set of APIs to help organizations scale effectively. And so I use my expertise of Adobe Target and that ecosystem and my many years of consulting to get with other small folks and build a product called Mia Proba. I'll have more on that in just a couple seconds. But then last year, a company called AdSwerve, which I'll talk about in a second, was acquired. So I am now head of optimization technology, still working intimately close with Adobe and organizations that use Adobe to help them scale and do some powerful things, of which I'm going to talk about here today. So AdSwerve, the company that came in and swooped in and bought the baby that I made, Mia Prova, they are historically, it's a 300-person company that is Google's number one partner. So they're a big Google Cloud Platform company, but they wanted to invest in Adobe. There's a smart team here at AdSwerve that saw the future in terms of Adobe's experience platform, customer journey analytics, Adobe Targets, AJO. And so I'm part of that special team that's doing some really, really powerful things with the Adobe ecosystem. I'm excited to show you some of that here today. So pretty cool company. We help organizations use Adobe Target and other tools, do some really cool things with the platform, including CJA. And just quickly about Mia Proba here quickly. Mia Proba is an optimization management platform. You could kind of think of it as like Jira. But the big differentiator is that from the ground up, it is built to manage optimization and personalization efforts. The other big differentiator that it does is it's got a real-time connection to Adobe Target, Adobe Analytics, Customer Journey Analytics. And so the rich set of APIs that Adobe makes available, we're making really, really strategic use of it. And we're helping organizations scale in a way that offers risk mitigation, but also shows program impact and things like that. I'm not here to talk about Mia Prova, but the AI components, the stories that I'm going to talk about here today are directly from organizations that are using Mia Prova. So they're real examples, real powerful things. So excited to kind of geek into that. So jumping into the different examples that I have here today. So the reason why, and like I said, I've got lots of organizations that are using AI to various degrees. I've got one organization, a big retailer that is using Adobe, using AI for at least 50 to probably 75% of their use of Adobe Target. And I'll show you real examples in just a second. The reason why they're using AI is not because they're trying to fill gaps in terms of like the technology. The reason why is there's so much power and they're able to quickly execute with Adobe Target. They want to scale more effectively. So one of the first things that they do is use AI for brainstorming, validation of different hypotheses or ideas and things along those lines. Another big thing, Adobe's visual editor, I absolutely love it. I use it for about probably 70-80% of my use of Adobe Target. And I, as a practitioner, I'm still setting up 20 to 30 tests a week for various organizations. So I absolutely use the visual editor quite a bit. But AI has also been helpful for code generation. I'm going to show you that on the fly. The other cool thing is with copywriting, and I'll show you some real examples of that. So I got about 15 minutes here. I'm going to go pretty quick through all of these just to kind of make sure that I hit them out, hit them all. So the first thing, strategy inspiration. There's so many cool things that we can do here. And so I'm going to use this website as a backdrop. So I took Adobe's demo page, Luna, put it on my server to kind of use it to kind of brainstorm different things within here. So I've got this website. It's an e-commerce website. You all can do the same with your websites and kind of do different things with it. So I went here and I just asked for, hey, can you design a new layout of the page? It gave me some pretty positive feedback in terms of what I should do with the header, what I should do with the hero content, the services section, insights, resources. So it really gave me some really solid feedback in terms of the design that's in place, that sort of thing. The other thing that that's been really helpful that organizations has loved is can you provide A/B test results that were winners for retail websites? And so Gen AI only has access to the data that's public, that's out there on the internet. So it's kind of limited to that degree, but you're able to get some really positive, very interesting results back from it. So you can see here just in terms of a product page enhancement, add to cart buttons and different things within here. So a wonderful way to kind of go in and collectively gather a bunch of different concepts within there. You can even ask for feedback. So I asked for feedback using this page. So looking at this page here, can you give some feedback on the hero section within here? And it consumed the information and gave me some really kind of interesting feedback and things to use within there. Um, so a really helpful thing. It also, I've seen organizations use this to provide feedback on different concepts. So you're in a brainstorming session. One group was particularly fond and looking on where to focus. You can even kind of ask it things like, let's see here, where should I focus my optimization efforts for the layout of this page. Find the page. You can see there. Oops. Oh, what is going on there? Okay. So you can see here, really wonderful way to kind of get that kind of feedback based on where they should kind of focus. So have some kind of fun with this. Like I said, it's open, allows organizations to quickly kind of see different ways or different things to kind of focus on and really some high level concepts to kind of think on. The next thing is kind of execution. And this is probably where AI has been the most helpful. I would tell you this past week alone, I've had 2 organizations that use Gen AI to generate different content. Okay, so here's kind of an example within here. So let's say we want to, I'm going to again use this page as the section. I'm going to say, let's move featured products to the top. So we've got featured products here. Obviously, Adobe's Visual Editor would be very good for this example, using its drag and drop, but I'll just kind of use this as an example. So I'm going to move this up over here, and then I'm going to say, can you generate the JavaScript and code to move the featured products to the top of the page above the hero section on this page. Pretty cool. So it takes this code here, and allows you to quickly bring it over and bring it in to Adobe Target. So then you would just use this code within here. You'd go over to Adobe Target and you'd be able to, you can use the visual editor. Let me bring in this page here again. Use that. Okay, allow to load the scripts. Perfect. And then you can just I'm going to add a modification and it's going to be custom code. Ooh, go back to here. Copy this. bring it back in. And away you go. So this has been huge. I've got a lot of companies that have been doing this to change navigations. I prefer to use Adobe's visual editor for this sort of thing because it's powerful enough to do that sort of thing. But where it's helpful for other things is to generate overlays or pop-ups or make things sticky navs, or you want to do different things in that regard. So coming over here, I'm going to do this. Can you generate an overlay that shows up on the page after 4 seconds? Add a red CTA that says hello world and allow the overlay to close with the escape button or by way of an X. Cool. So you can see it generates the code for you to modify. So this has been huge for companies to help scale and help get things up in Adobe Target. And so I actually went ahead. I'll save you guys time with all this. I'm going to go into here. Don't save this. This is the Adobe Target activity. So I've actually set this up right here. And so there's the code. I put it in a set thing and then boom. 1, 2, 3, 4, boom, there it is. Pretty cool. So really powerful. And then here you can see that it was loaded up on the page. This is a little Chrome extension that I use. My team has built. It helps with it's completely free, where you can do debugging and things with Adobe Target, which is pretty cool. So yeah, the execution has been a game changer. Quickly showing you Firefly. So Firefly is completely free. Well, not completely free. You can play around with it for free, but there's enterprise licensing and different things in that regard that you can use within here. I actually have it up and running here within Mia Prova. I am on an awesome Adobe Target webinar. So you can log into, Firefly, generate whatever images that you want. You can download it. We built a simple utility that moves it automatically to Adobe Target. You can do the same thing. Pretty cool, and brings it in here. And so what that would look like is you would replace content with an offer, and then it's already pushed to Adobe Target. So pretty cool, and then adjusted how it is. So I've seen organization use this to various degrees. It's been really helpful to get similar images. I'm going to delete this update. So an example here is a woman on the beach doing yoga. I've seen people do more where there's a group of people, or do kind of like lifestyle imagery or different things like that. So it's just another tool in your tool set of things to use. So content generation, copyright, things along those lines. I've seen a lot of companies, a lot of the Mia Proba community is making very, very heavy use of this. So here you can see, using the same Luna website, I said, hey, can you generate an alternative header against this header, get fit, which is what's in there today. And it gives some pretty interesting things, definitely worth testing and seeing that's out there. And so um, this is simple, so easy to use. I've got companies using it for product descriptions, for promo text, call to action things. And you can see here's another one. Discover the finest in yoga fashion from Luma. This was the providers, like, elevate your yoga style with Luma's premium activewear. And so with Adobe Target and A4T, you can kind of see how this little simple change could impact any of your particular metrics that's going on the site. So quickly moving along, two last concepts to convey here is, so Adobe Target, for those of you that may not be familiar with it, it's a first-party ID optimization and personalization tool, which is unmatched by really any of the other technologies that are on the market. And I know, because I work with them all. And so you can convert Adobe Target to be a first-party ID, which means any of the data that you have based off of your definition of the visitor ID can be used in Adobe Target. I have 3 companies right now that are making very heavy strategic use of AI to use visitor data. So the first use case is where they're looking at their first party data. They're using AI along with data scientists to build models. And they're leveraging Adobe Target's offline data API to augment that visitor data. So I'll show you that here really quickly on the site. So Adobe Target Bulk Uploader, we built a free utility for people to play with this and upload the data that you're looking to build within there. But just to kind of show you this in action. So um, this is that Chrome extension that I talked about earlier. You can see all the live activities that are taking place, but you can also see the visitor ID. This is Adobe Target's ID, but if you're using your first party ID, you would see that within here. These are all of the profile attributes, the metadata that you're being kind of used. And so what organizations are doing is they're using the Adobe Target profile attributes to generate with AI audiences to go after, which has been pretty powerful. I'm just going to show you really quickly. One particular organization is using Google's GCP, so BigQuery, their data warehouse. And so this is Adobe Target's API system in up and running. Um, Another company is using this with customer journey analytics, creating really strategic and using AI there to generate audiences. And so this is just a front end just to show you the what's going on in a demo account where you can take audiences and make them available for Adobe Target, which is really a pretty exciting in terms of what they're able to do. This big e-commerce company just used a AI. It was a very impactful campaign. They used AI on two methods here. This is a real use case. So they came, used their first party data. They had a pretty decent authentication rate on their site. Adobe Target is getting the first party ID. So they created an audience that they wanted Adobe Target to have. They used the offline APIs and gave Adobe Target a list of IDs to go after with that had the profile attributes. Then they actually used Gen AI to generate an overlay that was very specific to these individuals. So it was really cool. It's a cool example of both of them coming together, and they did see positive results of that. Last thing I want to show you here is something that you all should have some fun playing with. So this is Mia Prova. Here you can see a little bit of it behind the scenes, but this is real data going on behind the scenes. I'm just going to grab an activity. This is grabbing data from Adobe Target or Adobe Analytics if it's an A4T activity. So they're downloading this CSV. So they're downloading that data within there. Then they're going over to Gen AI. So they're going over to Gen AI. Let me go back to the presentation. Can you analyze the attached A/B test results? You can do this with Adobe Target too. Log into Adobe Target. You could download the CSV of your results within there, or if you're using A4T, you can download it within there. So you get the CSV or Excel download, and you ask it to look at the results. The feedback is fascinating. It takes just a couple seconds to do. So it's looking at the test results, what's going on there. There are all the different metrics that you had included within the test setup. So this is the key findings. Then it also gives you recommendations based off of what's the results. This over the last probably 3 or 4 months has been huge because organizations they've run their tests, but they kind of look at the high level results. But this has given them like concrete next steps to go after. So this is a real test that is run from a real organizations. I went to Mia Prova, downloaded the CSV, I uploaded it. I got this back in a matter of like 5 seconds. And this actually was then converted and they've prioritized these tests based off of the results. So pretty cool. Lots of fun things that you can do with AI and Adobe Target. I'm going to turn it over to Mary, but please reach out if there's any questions or if folks want me to at some point go further.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Brian. So, hi, everyone. I'm so excited to be here with you today. Again, I am Mary Geppetta Latin, and I am an optimization architect at Red Hat. As Drew mentioned at the top of the call, I'm going to talk about the art of the possible with Adobe recommendations, specifically covering B2B use cases. So first, a little about me. I am a University of North Carolina graduate. Go Heels. I am also based in Charlotte, North Carolina, where I was born and raised. So thrown in a Go Panthers as well. I am a proud Red Hatter of nearly 3 years where I have spent my time in the optimization space. I also enjoy traveling and eating great food. Who doesn't? I got a couple of pictures on the slide, but absolutely love visiting Chicago. And I recently traveled to Munich to visit the Christmas markets. I'm also a newlywed and I got married to my high school sweetheart last April. So finally, I am incredibly passionate about Adobe recommendations and making automation and personalization succeed at scale. Adobe recommendations is one of my favorite things that I get to work on. And when all the pieces come together, it is very rewarding. So here's a peek at what we'll discuss today. I'm going to walk through how to get started with Adobe recommendations and what we did at Red Hat, show you how we've proved value of using Adobe recommendations through A/B testing, and also give you a peek under the hood inside Target, as well as share some of our next steps and learnings as we continue to scale. So first, I want to talk a little bit about what we did to get started using recommendations. A little bit of background. When we were setting goals for our team and how we wanted to grow our site personalization capabilities, we decided we wanted to fully lean into Adobe recommendations as a lever we could pull to create the best possible experiences for our users. We wanted to seize an opportunity to more broadly utilize the high quality and high value resources and content that Red Hat produces. So, really unleashing the power of automation and the recommendations algorithms on our sites. We crafted a plan to intentionally build out our implementation from the ground up with all this in mind. So, in our case, we actually had a previous implementation in place. However, due to infrastructure changes over time, such as changes to our CMS, we had found inconsistencies in the way that data was being pulled in that we needed to address in order to fully trust recommendations to serve up content to our users cleanly. So, with that in place, we actually were able to use that previous implementation to inform how we would set up our new implementation. So we audited our catalog to identify any issues and inconsistencies that we needed to solve for. And then from there, we wiped our catalog and disabled our ingest. Once we got that done, we then set up new tag manager rules to solve for past issues. A couple of examples. We implemented a new Rex ID structure that helped us clearly identify which domain the content was coming from, as well as which language it was in. This helped us make sure that there was a separate entry in Rex for every language a piece of content was available in, and also make sure things were properly translated. And we also solved for things like link redirects. So once we had our broader rules in place, we needed to start bringing in content. So as I mentioned, we're in a B2B use case, and our first content type was training courses and exams. And this was another thing that we wanted to be really intentional about as we started ramping up. So we decided to take it one content type at a time rather than just opening the floodgates and ingesting a bunch of different content into our catalog. And taking this approach, again, allowed us to be really intentional about the data that we're bringing in and how we're structuring it. So we're learning more and more with each content type we bring in and each collection we create. So this has been a really beneficial way of doing it. So, with each of those content types that we do bring in, we also do an audit of the taxonomy and metadata since, of course, we're using Adobe recommendations to display the content to users. We need to make sure that the metadata that we're presenting to the users is clean and that the tagging is correct. So something we've been really attentive to as we're getting this off the ground so we don't unintentionally confuse our users. And finally, first, I mentioned those overall tag manager rules, but we also have specific pieces of data that we are bringing in for each content type. So, for example, trainings and courses, they have a course ID, and that's something that would not be present for other content types. So, we create rules to ingest those specific pieces of data, again, taking it content type by content type on a case-by-case basis, evaluating what is needed, and then getting the experience live. So also have some example content types on the side that we've ingested for inspiration. I mentioned the training courses and exam as our first use case, but we've also ingested ebooks, webinars, blogs, articles, and certifications, and of course, even more to come. So what this really means for Red Hat. This is a huge step forward for site personalization at scale and our ability to personalize inline on our pages. We can really use any web page that has accurate tagging as an offer in our experiences. So this highlights a few things. First, really showcases the power of automation. Using Adobe recommendations has value for our users who are getting served the right content at the right time. And it has value for us as Red Hatters, reducing the need to manually select and code content, helping us move swiftly. So we're really letting the algorithms do the work for us. It's also a great example of collaboration in action. We could not have done this without cross-team collaboration. And while we've had many incredible team members involved in this work, I did want to call out some key roles. These include developers, UX producers, program managers, content managers, strategists, and analysts. And finally, we're doing all of this in support of key Red Hat digital strategy objectives and priority marketing funnels. We're focused on progressing users through life cycle stages and supporting the user journey through the Rex experiences that we launch. So now I want to talk through a few examples of work that we've done and how we've proved the value of recommendations through A/B testing. With this capability online in action, there's a lot of testing that we're trying to do to better understand the algorithms and how they perform with our users. So again, our first use case, training courses and exams. We launched an A/B test in our navigation that used the most popular algorithm considering user product affinity. And we saw a 21% lift in click through, which was huge. This showed us that there was a lot of value in the work that we're doing for our users and was super encouraging after all of our hard work. So while we did have this big winner, not everything has been a home run. We launched another A/B test recommending those same trainings and courses on our all training courses and exams page. And for this test, we just used the most popular algorithm and we actually saw a decrease in click through. However, we saw this opportunity to scale our learnings from that navigation test. So ran a follow-up test with that same algorithm, most popular considering user product affinity. And again, we saw a huge lift, a 23% increase in click-through rate. So awesome there. I'll also mention here, Red Hat, we actually have our own affinity logic, but I know there's out-of-the-box logic in Target that can be used as well. So really just key takeaway here was being able to tailor these algorithms to the user does lead to more engagement. And again, it just helps demonstrate the value of recommendations and how it enables us to better serve our users content that they're interested in. So once we see these winners, we do go ahead and push all the traffic to the winning algorithm. And I do want to mention here, we're so grateful to the trainings and courses team for their collaboration on these tests in our first use case. So now, now that we've seen a couple of examples, I'm going to connect the dots on the taxonomy and metadata piece and show you how we use what we ingest in our experiences. So as you can see, we have a data schema that maps out how we display recommendations within those cards from our last example. So we're pulling in the title, course ID, description, and CTA from the metadata. We're even dynamically changing the CTA copy based off the tagging to tell us whether it's a course or exam. And getting that needed consistency in taxonomy and metadata is a big focus for us as we continue to scale recommendations. This can be challenging in the B2B content world. I think e-commerce, it can be easier to create that consistency needed for recommendations because accurate tagging is so central to purchasing. It's not always the case in our world. So this is something our team is really focused on, working closely with the folks that manage this data. And now I want to give a look under the hood into recommendations. So first on the left, you can see our training courses collection within recommendations. You can see that Rex ID structure I was talking about, as well as how that data is appearing in the collection for trainings and courses. You can also see the item details for trainings just next to that. Again, it shows those different pieces of data that we decided to ingest for this content type. And finally, you can see our criteria for the most popular filtered by affinity algorithm, showing some of the key details, such as, we're matching the product affinity data on the page to the user's product affinity. And we also show backup data if the user has no product affinity. So in this case, we just use the most popular algorithm. Alrighty. And so, of course, more to come. We're currently working to launch Adobe recommendations on the My Red Hat authenticated dashboard. This is a centralized user dashboard with user-specific data, personalized recommendations, and access to cross-channel resources and tools. We see it as a digital success center for all users, prospects, customers, partners in their journey with Red Hat. And so what we want to do here first is to continue to scale those learnings. Again, we saw really great success with the most popular considering user product affinity algorithm. So we want to scale that algorithm to the featured trainings and certification section of this dashboard. But ultimately, we see a lot of opportunity on this dashboard to kind of just unleash recommendations. This is an authenticated dashboard. So when users come here, they're expecting that we know them. They're expecting a personalized experience to them and their Red Hat journey, making this the ideal space for those personalized content recommendations. All right. So far, we've had some really great success, but we also have had a lot of learnings along the way. So I just want to talk about like what's next as we continue to grow. As we move forward, I want to continue socializing this work. Some of the things that we've done so far has been demoing our work and sharing A/B test results to the broader digital and brand teams. This has been getting folks excited about the work we're doing, and they're eager to get involved. And we've also been really intentional to get buy-in from the strategy folks so that they can recommend new content types and keep recommendations top of mind when they're thinking of new experiences for our site. We're also going to continue testing the various Adobe recommendations algorithms, proving their benefit and learning how best to use them. I've mentioned the ones that we've seen success with so far, but there's many more out there that Drew mentioned at the top of the call, and we want to keep testing and learning about those, how our users respond in different site areas with different content types. Of course, we want to continue ingesting content types, building up our catalog of content that can be used in Rex experiences. What we bring in and when we bring it in will be guided by digital strategy objectives, but we see a very robust catalog in our future. So another thing that we're focused on right now is working closer with content teams. Of course, we're in touch with them as we're learning about the different content types and what data will be useful to ingest, but we want to get them involved earlier in the process. Auditing content takes a lot of work. So we want to get the content folks involved earlier, sharing documentation that explains how we're using their content's taxonomy and metadata, involving them in ensuring that when we do display their content through Rex, the data is accurate and clean for our users. Also audits are a point in time. So how do we educate these folks to make sure that the data stays clean going forward when we are using their content and recommendations? So just really trying to bring them into the fold of our work and sharing that shared benefit and opportunity that we have with recommendations. We're getting their content in front of a lot of people using automation and these great algorithms, as long as we can make sure that that data is clean. So I've also learned a lot about our implementation along the way. I talked about those tag manager rules that we set up at the beginning that were informed by our past implementation. And we have just continued to learn new things that could be improved or added as we brought content types in. So continuously making improvements there. And of course, as I mentioned, very key to our recommendations success is continuing to advocate for consistent, accurate taxonomy and metadata across our site system. So this is huge to make sure that we can deploy experiences in the way that we want to. We really want to support standardized and potentially new taxonomy in response to this key question. If you were going to recommend content to a user, what data points would you want that decision to be based off of? So we're thinking about this when we're looking at taxonomy and what we want to bring in, but also what taxonomy we may need to add so we can really like slice and dice our data and get the right pieces of content in front of people in the right way that's most helpful for them. And now to close, I want to give an example of current state and our desired future state. So first, where we're at now, which is one Adobe recommendations activity and a placement to all visitors. But where we are headed is a structured and repeatable strategy. So running multiple activities and key placements to different audiences. We want to continue to learn about these algorithms, how different audiences respond to them, and really just build up these key placements where we can unleash recommendations across our site system. So yeah, thank you all so much for your time and attention. It has been such a pleasure to share our work with you today. If you're watching from Red Hat and you were involved in this work in any way, shout out to you. And yeah, now I believe we are going to take questions.
Now you can see how inspiring it is to work in this space, how inspiring it is to be able to showcase Mary and Brian's amazing work, not just in terms of driving results, not just in terms of being creative in their activity design and their strategy, but also using the latest tools to do it. And thank you both so much. It was an honor to have you both on this webinar. And there's so much more to talk about. I mean, I think we've just scratched the surface. So another plug for Summit where you could meet us and more, so much more in the community. And so please do show up or log in. And we're going to take a few questions because we do have time for questions, which we don't always have. Oh, I wanted to call out actually, Mary, one thing that you were talking about making recommendations progressively more fine-tuned is criteria sequencing. That's an out of the box part of the recommendations build, activity build, where you can layer recommendations one after another. So as the target profile collects more data, we'll move into a more refined recommendation moving down the line. Of course, you can optimize that sequence as well. So again, built-in capabilities to help with those next steps that you were talking about. For Emily, how long does it take to implement recommendations? Because you were talking about, obviously you were switching over and you were sort of looking at the feed again. How long does that whole process take, would you say?
Yeah, I mean, I think it definitely depends on, like, where you're at and what kind of research you could put behind us. It took us a little bit of time to, make that switch over and really clean out our catalog and get the new ingest going, but, I think to start from scratch, you could do it pretty quickly, especially taking that modular approach of getting one content type in at a time. I think that makes it really manageable, to do. So, a few weeks to kinda, map out where you wanna start, what you wanna bring in for that content, and then our audits, those usually take, 2 to 3 weeks, depending on, if the data's great or if it needs some tweaks, and then from there, it's just setting up the target experience and letting it run.
That's great. I think that's a good point, is that we think we have to wait until everything is excellent, until we've got everything perfected, but just getting started with what you have and then building, growing, maturing over time. That lowers the barrier. For Brian, can you give some examples of organizations maybe that are pushing back a little bit on AI, and how do you overcome that AI adoption?
Yeah, that's actually a pretty good question, and something all the companies that I showed examples of today had to deal with. The biggest thing was making sure that whatever was used with Adobe Target was static, that it didn't become AI again on its own, you know? You've got that power of Adobe within Adobe Target to control that. Kind of like this is something with automated personalization, which for those of you geek out with it, it's pretty cool. With automated personalization, you give Adobe Target a bunch of different offers and let the machine decide what to show. And people were concerned about with AI to that degree about like, okay, AI is going to like do something. I don't know what it's going to show. It wouldn't adhere to brand guidelines, things like that. So that was like the first thing. But once we kind of addressed like, hey, we're making it static, we're getting the input, we're getting the copywriting and making it static and target, that made things a little bit easier. The second thing is kind of related to the Firefly thing that I kind of geeked out with. And something you will need to address with your legal departments in terms of like intellectual property IP. So if you're a big brand, you're not going to want to take an image created from the internet and just throw it in your system. It might not adhere to brand guidelines and things like that. The other thing pretty cool is for those designers that are put together content that's used digitally. They use Photoshop, and so you need different layers and the ability to move something or adjust something like that. You're not going to have that power. You're not going to get a Photoshop export, at least now, not now that I know of and whatnot. So the challenges they're able to overcome them, but they do exist.
That's great, Brian. And a plug for the Summit session I'll be involved with at Summit on that subject with Prudential. A customer in the financial services space, highly regulated, and what they had to do to go through to lay in compliance and to have compliance internally, and that's an important step. Is just I know there's insurance companies, that healthcare companies that have talked about this at Summit before, but getting over those organizational understandings, not just in terms of how the product's going to be used, what the product does, but also, as Brian was mentioning, the content, making sure the content uh, stays within the guidelines. All of that's important to establish upfront. And once you do that, then you're off to the races. Brian, are you planning on bringing any AI capabilities into Mia Prova?
Ooh, good question. A bit. We're legal. Mia Prova doesn't own the data, and so we don't want to give the data to other things to do it. So, we too are kind of working through that. We've had many clients ask us to do kind of what I demoed here, to do that automated analysis. We have over 135,000 Adobe Target activities in our system. We'd love to do it, but we're just figuring out the legal aspect, because we're read only and we don't share data. So, but I'd
Awesome.
love to.
Sounds good. Well,
Yeah.
we'll stay tuned. Mary, how do you keep track of what metadata is being pulled in for each content type?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So, of course, we have, all the rules in the tag manager, but we wanted something too that was a little bit more accessible than like having to go in there and think of the rules. So we've created this really great spreadsheet. I call it like input tracking by collection, where we really list for each content type that we have, each piece of data that we're pulling in for it, and actually where it's coming from the site. So then if we do ever see anything funky, it's like, okay, nope, we have right here in our spreadsheet, like where we're pulling this, let's go in and take a look. And it makes it really easy to keep track of everything. And again, just keep a handle on that data and keep everything clean. And also, when we're bringing in new content types, it's like, oh, we have this list to reference, what was helpful in the past and what we might want to bring in for this new one.
Yeah, establishing rules and guidelines up front. I think that's kind of the takeaway from a lot of these questions, which is good and important. And we can often rush past it. And it's so important up front. Helps us organize. I know we're a minute over, but we'll keep on going for those that can stay on. Um, Mary, how do you build trust and gain buy-in from stakeholders when launching new recommendations activities? This is actually for both of you. I mean, just in activities in general, how do you get the buy-in for that?
Yeah, for sure, and especially when we're, showing them this new capability, new to them, Adobe recommendations. We get a lot of questions like, "Hey, how is this gonna work?" Any concerns? So, one thing I really do is I walk them through what recommendations is and the opportunity we have there, and really just, like, how exciting, it is that we're able to unleash this, and usually people do get pretty excited from that. But some other reassurances that I give is, of course, those data audits, we are checking to make sure we're not showing the user anything surprising or anything that would be confusing with this, especially, for these earlier use cases. But also too, now we have a couple of A/B tests under our belt that went pretty well, and being able to show that data and what we've been able to do for other content types in other places, definitely gets people excited and it builds trust in what we're doing.
Good point. I mean, talking about projected outcome and all of that, and even if you're able to do it with a level of accuracy, especially looking back at data, that can be really powerful. Brian, what are some ways that you get by it?
Yeah, I could echo what Mary said, but the two other things that I found to be helpful is with Target, you can kind of set constraints, limit the amount of people that see it. Um, and then with A for T, or even within Adobe Target, you get a real-time pulse, see how it's doing, right? And then the auto allocate, I kind of like when people are really nervous about putting something new out there, I bring up auto allocate and I talk about, hey, okay, if you got version B and version A, if version B is doing bad, auto allocate will suppress it, and you'll learn that, and it's risk mitigation just on the fly, which is pretty cool. And not to pimp out Mia Proba again, but one of the things we do is alert when good, bad, ugly things happen based off of data from Adobe. So, but yeah, the auto allocation, alerting, and just the real time pulse within A for T and non A for T activities.
You can always showcase Mia Proba. Obviously, it's built by one of the longest practitioners in the product, and it's a fantastic tool with all the bells and whistles. So absolutely talk about it. And we love hearing about it and seeing it. I think we're good on questions. And I know we're 4 minutes over. I just, again, want to thank you both. This is awesome. We want to do more of these. You're both welcome back, please. And Mary, we want to see your progress with recommendations. Brian, we want to hear more about all the cool stuff you're doing with Gen AI and advancements you're making in the Aproba and with that sort. And so thank you. And thank you all.
Thank you all.